Mercy Otis Warren was a Massachusetts woman of letters and a passionate patriot who became one of the most influential voices of the American Revolution. Mercy Otis Warren, poet, playwright, and historian, was born in Barnstable, Massachusetts in September 1728. She came from a prominent political family. She possessed extraordinary intelligence and wit. Warren's intellectual pursuits were remarkable for a woman of her era. She was educated at home alongside her brothers, an unusual privilege for girls in colonial America. Then in 1754, at the age of 26, Mercy Otis married James Warren, a merchant and political leader from Plymouth. The marriage united two of Massachusetts's most influential families, including their home in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Mercy Otis Warren was a woman living in a man's world, yet she commanded respect through her pen. She had 5 sons between 1757 and 1766. In the 1760s, when the British Parliament began imposing harsh taxes and restrictions on the American colonies, Warren became deeply involved in the Patriot cause. Warren wrote against the British and their oppressive policies in colonial America. Her brother James Otis Jr. was a fiery orator and early Patriot leader who opposed British taxation. He delivered passionate speeches against the writs of assistance and British tyranny. Warren was profoundly influenced by her brother's political activism and his commitment to colonial rights. James Otis Jr. suffered from mental illness that worsened over time, possibly from a head injury sustained in a confrontation with British customs officials. He sought treatment, but his condition deteriorated throughout the 1770s. He was struck down by lightning in 1783, and his death deeply affected Warren. She was embittered by the tragedy that befell her beloved brother. In the early 1770s, Warren began writing political satire and propaganda for the Patriot cause. Within months she published her first political play, a satirical work mocking British officials in Massachusetts. Warren was not just a passive observer or a supporter of male revolutionaries. She was an active architect of revolutionary thought. She used her writing as a weapon against tyranny. Mercy Otis Warren was one of the most important propagandists of the American Revolution, using satire and drama to influence public opinion. America felt that Britain, its mother country, was exploiting it through taxation and denying it the freedom to govern itself. George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and other founding fathers corresponded with Warren regularly. She was a trusted advisor and confidant to the leaders of the Revolution. Warren was not a soldier on the battlefield, but she fought with words and ideas, shaping the intellectual foundation of American independence. She was a more strategic thinker than many of the men around her, understanding that winning hearts and minds was as crucial as winning military battles. In 1772, Warren published her first satirical play, The Adulateur, which depicted the royal governor of Massachusetts, Thomas Hutchinson, as a tyrant named Rapatio. The play was published anonymously in a Boston newspaper. 1 year later, she published The Defeat, another satirical attack on Hutchinson and British authority. Warren's plays were literally revolutionary propaganda designed to turn colonists against British rule. In 1773, Warren published The Group, her most famous play, which portrayed the Loyalists and British officials as corrupt and self-serving villains. The play was widely circulated throughout the colonies. But Warren's influence extended far beyond her published works. She maintained an extensive correspondence with the leading figures of the American Revolution. Mercy Otis Warren lost some friends because of her uncompromising political views, but she never lost her commitment to the cause of liberty. She always remained steadfast in her principles. During the Revolutionary War, Warren continued writing and supporting the Patriot cause from her home in Plymouth. The winter of 1777 and 1778 was particularly difficult for patriots everywhere. Valley Forge represented the suffering of the Continental Army, but civilians like Warren also endured hardships and uncertainty. Warren's strategy was to keep writing, to keep the flame of liberty burning through her words. Warren witnessed the entire Revolutionary War unfold, from the first shots at Lexington and Concord to the final victory. In 1783, with the war over, Warren did not retire from public discourse. She remained engaged in the political debates shaping the new nation. Warren was pulled into the heated debates over the proposed Constitution in 1787 and 1788. That contentious period saw Americans divided over how much power the federal government should possess. She opposed the Constitution initially, believing it gave too much power to the central government and lacked sufficient protection for individual rights. She agreed with the Anti-Federalists who demanded a Bill of Rights to protect citizens' liberties. On April 30, 1789, George Washington was sworn in as the first President of the United States. Warren watched as her friend John Adams became Vice President and later the second President. Warren corresponded with Abigail Adams, John's wife, creating one of the most important female friendships in early American history. These two brilliant women exchanged ideas about politics, philosophy, and the role of women in the new republic. Warren understood that for democracy to truly flourish, women's voices and contributions must be recognized and valued. But Warren's most ambitious project was yet to come. In 1805, after decades of research and writing, Mercy Otis Warren published her 3-volume masterwork, History of the Rise, Progress, and Termination of the American Revolution. She was 77 years old when this monumental history was published. The work was the first comprehensive history of the American Revolution published by an American, and remarkably, it was written by a woman. Warren's history covered the events from 1765 to 1800, providing detailed accounts of battles, political debates, and the characters of the Revolution's key figures. Warren's history was controversial because she did not simply glorify the Founding Fathers. She offered critical assessments of their actions and characters. She praised George Washington for his military leadership and his willingness to relinquish power. She admired his character and his commitment to Republican principles. But she was critical of John Adams, her former friend, suggesting that he had monarchical tendencies and had become too fond of ceremony and titles. This criticism deeply wounded Adams and caused a rift between the two families that lasted for years. John Adams was furious with Warren's portrayal of him in her history. He wrote angry letters to her, defending his actions and attacking her credibility. The correspondence between Adams and Warren in 1807 and 1808 became a bitter exchange. Adams questioned whether a woman could truly understand political and military matters. Warren responded with dignity and force, defending her work and her right to write history. She argued that proximity to events and access to key figures gave her unique insights that male historians lacked. Eventually, the two old friends reconciled before Adams's death, but the controversy highlighted the challenges Warren faced as a female intellectual in a male-dominated world. Warren was literally fighting for recognition as a serious historian and political thinker in an era when women were expected to confine themselves to domestic matters. She was using her pen to claim space for women in the historical record and in public discourse. No one was expecting a woman to write such an ambitious and comprehensive history of the Revolution. Warren's history was groundbreaking not just because of her gender, but because of her approach. She wrote history as both participant and observer, combining first-hand knowledge with careful research. She included character sketches and moral judgments, believing that history should teach virtue and warn against vice. Her history was infused with Republican ideology, emphasizing the dangers of power, luxury, and corruption. She warned that the new American Republic could fall into tyranny if citizens became complacent or if leaders became too ambitious. Following the publication of her history, Warren continued writing poetry and essays. That productive period in her late 70s and early 80s demonstrated her enduring intellectual vitality. She never lost her passion for writing and for engaging with the great questions of her time. She always remained committed to Republican principles and to the education of future generations. On October 19, 1814, Mercy Otis Warren died at her home in Plymouth, Massachusetts, at the age of 86. When she died, she left behind a remarkable literary legacy and a model of female intellectual achievement. Warren was even in death a pioneering figure who had challenged gender barriers and expanded the possibilities for women in American society. Her plays had helped ignite revolutionary fervor. Her correspondence had influenced the Founding Fathers. Her history had preserved the memory of the Revolution for future generations. Mercy Otis Warren understood that words have power, that ideas can change the world, and that women have as much right and ability to shape history as men. Warren's life spanned the entire Revolutionary era, from the protests against British taxation in the 1760s to the establishment and early years of the American Republic. She witnessed the transformation of 13 colonies into an independent nation. She saw her friends and correspondents become presidents and statesmen. She experienced both the triumph of independence and the challenges of building a new government. Warren lived through the Revolutionary War, the Constitutional Convention, the Federalist and Anti-Federalist debates, and the first decades of the Republic. Her home in Plymouth became a gathering place for patriots and political leaders. John and Abigail Adams visited frequently. Samuel Adams, her husband's cousin, was a regular correspondent. Thomas Jefferson respected her intellect and her historical work. Even Alexander Hamilton, despite their political differences, acknowledged her influence. Warren's salon was one of the intellectual centers of revolutionary Massachusetts, where ideas were debated and strategies discussed. Warren's marriage to James Warren was a true partnership of equals, rare for the 18th century. James supported his wife's intellectual pursuits and shared her political convictions. He served in the Massachusetts legislature and as Paymaster General of the Continental Army. The Warrens worked together for the Patriot cause, with James in political office and Mercy wielding her pen. Their correspondence when separated reveals a deep affection and mutual respect. James valued Mercy's political insights and often sought her advice on important matters. The Warrens raised 5 sons during the tumultuous Revolutionary period. Their eldest son, James Warren Jr., died young, a loss that devastated Mercy. Another son, Winslow Warren, struggled with alcoholism and financial problems, causing the family great distress. Their son George Warren served in the military but also faced difficulties. These personal tragedies reminded Warren that even as she engaged with great historical events, she was also a mother dealing with the ordinary sorrows and challenges of family life. Warren's poetry revealed her more personal side, expressing her emotions, her religious faith, and her observations about human nature. She wrote poems about friendship, virtue, death, and the passage of time. Her poetry was published in newspapers and magazines throughout her life. She wrote in the neoclassical style popular in the 18th century, drawing on classical references and moral themes. Her poems celebrated Republican virtue and warned against luxury and corruption. She believed that poetry, like history and drama, should instruct and improve readers. Warren's religious faith was an important part of her identity. She was raised in the Congregationalist tradition and maintained her faith throughout her life. She believed that divine providence had guided America to independence and that Americans had a special responsibility to create a virtuous republic. Her writings often included religious and moral themes, reflecting her conviction that political freedom required moral virtue. She warned that a republic could not survive without virtuous citizens who placed the common good above private interest. Warren's views on women's roles were complex and sometimes contradictory. She believed women were intellectually equal to men and capable of understanding politics and history. She demonstrated this through her own achievements. Yet she also accepted many conventional ideas about women's proper sphere being the home and family. She never publicly advocated for women's political rights or suffrage. Instead, she claimed influence through indirect means, through her writing and through her influence on men in power. Warren represented what historians call Republican motherhood, the idea that women served the Republic by educating their sons to be virtuous citizens and by influencing their husbands' political views. She expanded this role by becoming a public intellectual and historian, but she did so while maintaining that she was simply fulfilling her duty to her country. She navigated the constraints of her era with skill, claiming authority and influence while not directly challenging gender hierarchies. Warren's legacy was largely forgotten in the 19th century as male historians dominated the field and women's contributions to the revolution were minimized. Her history was criticized for its partisan viewpoint and its focus on character rather than strict factual narrative. Later historians preferred more objective, document-based approaches. Warren's history fell out of print and was rarely cited. Her plays were not performed. Her poetry was not anthologized. For more than a century, Mercy Otis Warren was a footnote in American history, remembered if at all as the sister of James Otis Jr. or as a minor female patriot. The 20th century brought renewed interest in Warren and other women of the Revolutionary era. Feminist historians rediscovered her work and recognized her significance. New editions of her history and plays were published. Scholars studied her correspondence and analyzed her political thought. Warren was recognized as an important political thinker, propagandist, and historian. She became a symbol of women's intellectual capabilities and their hidden contributions to American history. Today, Warren is celebrated as one of the most important female figures of the American Revolution. Mercy Otis Warren's life reminds us that history is not made only by soldiers and statesmen, but also by writers and thinkers who shape public opinion and preserve memory. She understood that controlling the narrative, telling the story of events, is a form of power. She claimed that power for herself and for women, demonstrating that women could be historians, political commentators, and public intellectuals. She challenged the assumption that politics and war were exclusively male domains. Warren also reminds us that the American Revolution was not just a military conflict but an intellectual and ideological movement. The revolution was fought with ideas as much as with muskets. Writers like Warren helped create a revolutionary consciousness, convincing colonists that independence was necessary and just. Her satirical plays made British officials look ridiculous and tyrannical. Her correspondence encouraged patriot leaders and helped them clarify their thinking. Her history preserved the revolutionary generation's understanding of what they had accomplished and why it mattered. In the end, Mercy Otis Warren was a revolutionary in multiple senses. She participated in a political revolution against British rule. She contributed to a revolution in historical writing by being the first American to write a comprehensive history of the Revolution. And she participated in a quiet revolution in gender roles by demonstrating that women could be serious intellectuals and political thinkers. She did all this while managing a household, raising children, and navigating the social expectations of her time. Her achievement was remarkable, and her legacy continues to inspire those who believe in the power of words and ideas to change the world.